Hi, welcome to part 2 of the definitive guide to journaling. So I wanted to answer some questions I asked on Instagram. Got a lot of amazing questions from you guys about journaling, and I'm going to try and hit on at least the ones that kept coming up. And I'm going to show you at the end my most prized possession in this world. So we have a lot of exciting ground to cover. So first of all, what time of day do I journal? You saw I start my day with it first thing in the morning. I love waking up this way. It is so peaceful, calming, such a soothing ritual. I also like to do it in the morning before anything else comes up. So I will kind of work backwards thinking like, what's the time that people are gonna start needing things from me? Like work emails coming in, my husband wanting to have breakfast together, my dog's needing a walk. Before any of that happens, ideally I would wake up an hour before all that other stuff. So I do have morning routine videos you can check out if you want to see some of that, but basically wake up as much before the world starts knocking on your door as possible so that you have this time that's just yours. Whenever I think I'm going to journal later in the day, I don't always get to it. And in fact, I am definitely least consistent on my gratitude journal that I do at night just because I'm often so tired by the time I go to bed. So I like to do it first thing before anything can take it away from me. And a question that came up a lot is, how do I stay consistent? It seems like a lot of people are starting to journal, maybe doing it a week or two and then falling off. And my biggest tip with this is for anything else in life that you want to be consistent with, make it enjoyable. Like we stick to things that are pleasant. If I was setting my alarm at 5 a.m., dragging myself out of bed, coming to sit in a bright fluorescent room and an uncomfortable upright desk and write in my journal, I would not want to do it while drinking celery juice, and I don't know how else I can make this routine uncomfortable, but you get the point. Instead, I have it as comfortable and cozy as possible. So I have all my supplies in that little basket. It's all right by the couch with a cozy blanket, a candle, have my coffee pot set, have the timer set. That is such a key tip for life, you guys. Like waking up to have your coffee made for you is the best feeling. So I always set my coffee the night before, and all I have to do when my alarm goes off is roll out of bed, put on a comfy robe, pour that cup of coffee, crash onto the couch. Like it's so easy, it couldn't be easier. So that really helps me stick to it because I know I have this cozy, wonderful routine set up around it. And it's special. It's like, even if I did that whole routine just to go sit on my phone on the couch for an hour, I would not be excited to do that. Like going to bed, I wouldn't be like, oh, I can't wait to get on my phone in the morning. You know, like journaling is a really special process once you get into it. So trust the process and give it a shot. Another question was, how do I remember to do it? And I think kind of the same answer, like tie it into your morning routine and set yourself up for success. So have that little basket of supplies, put it somewhere visible that you'll see it in the morning, put it next to your coffee pot maybe, so when you go to get your coffee, I always say tie your morning routine to your coffee, because for most of us, that's a part of your routine you're never gonna forget. So for me, journal while I drink coffee, it's beautiful, it writes itself, it's perfect. Another question that kept coming up is, what do you do with old journals? So like I said, I recycle them. I do not feel the need to keep them. I think rereading them is honestly quite cringy. And if you're not cringing at your past self, you're not growing. So I'm fine with that. Like, yes, some of these entries just truly make me cringe. The thought of somebody else reading them makes me cringe. So after this video, I'll probably go ahead and recycle all of these dating back to 2019. I think I was just holding on to them to show you guys. But yeah, I don't feel the need to reread them. I will reread like my current week to kind of take the temperature of my life. Usually in the morning, I'll kind of flip back a few pages and see where my headspace has been at the last couple mornings. And sometimes that's really helpful. It just kind of helps me notice like if I'm in a more negative headspace for a certain time, or what I'm going through that's kind of weighing on me, and it helps me address those things and kind of clear the air. But other than that, I don't reread them, except for something like my 5-year journal, where it's fun to see where I was on this date 3 years ago. Or my gratitude journal, I would never not want to pick this up and be like, oh yeah, I'm so grateful for all these great things. Another question, can you journal on your computer? You can journal on your phone or on your computer. There are apps for that. But I would personally, that would be an extreme last resort for me because I feel like the magic is using a pen and writing on paper. Like not being able to keep up with my thoughts, like slowing my thoughts down to the pace of handwriting. Feeling the paper, it's very tactile. Feeling the pen kind of gets you into your body. Like it's just much more calming than staring at a screen and notifications popping up and distractions like, oh, I could open social media. None of that. Like, this is a calm space that we are in. So I don't recommend technology at all. In fact, if possible, don't even have your phone near you while you're journaling. It's way too tempting to pick it up. All right, another top concern that a lot of people wrote to me about was not knowing what to write about. So I'm kind of curious with some follow-up questions on this. I wasn't sure if it's that people's minds were truly blank or they were overthinking what to write about. I have to say that hasn't personally been my experience. Like, as you can probably tell, I'm a bit of a chatty person. I usually have plenty to write about, and I kind of think of my journal as like a best friend that you can say anything to and pour your heart out. Doesn't matter how minute the thing you want to talk about is, you know, with your like bestie, it's okay. You can talk about anything. So that's how I see it. And I think that's why my mind is never blank, because I would never not have something to say to a best friend. Also, in real life, when I talk to friends, I will easily have an hour-long phone call and never really talk about the minutia of my life. I'm much more interested in hearing about what's going on with them, because I already spilled it out in my diary, my journal, and I don't really need to bombard other people with that stuff. So that's kind of a side perk, I think. It's nice to catch up with my friends and just really focus on listening to them. And yeah, your journal is your bestie. You can say anything in here. So if you have a blank mind, I usually just start with what I do yesterday. How did I sleep? What am I gonna have for breakfast? What am I gonna do today? Just kind of thinking through whatever is at the top of your mind. And a lot of times that will unlock something a lot deeper. So you think, oh, this is stupid. Why am I writing about what I did yesterday? Just try to turn off that inner critic voice and just see what comes up, because as you start journaling about your day yesterday, you might realize, you know, what was the best part was my evening routine. And I want to really dig into that and do that every night and make every night so cozy like last night was. You know, just little insights into your life. It doesn't always have to be so deep or so life-changing. Honestly, there's plenty of days where I'm just like, hey, what's up? Here's what I did yesterday. Here's what I'm going to do today. Anyway, good chat. Like, that's it. But it clears my mind, and it just kind of gets that stuff off of my mind, and then moving on with my day. And also, I would just like to throw out there, whenever in doubt, if you don't know what to say, always gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. Gratitude is the secret sauce. I will forever be shouting this from the rooftops. If you can't think of anything, just start listing everything that you're grateful for. And that goes double time. If you're in a bad mood or you're having a rough day and you feel like nothing's going right, I would really like to challenge you to try to find things to be grateful for, because there's always so much, and it's really fun to write about that, and it puts you in a really positive headspace once you start to realize just how fortunate we all are to be here and breathing and looking out at the blue sky, and there's so much to be grateful for. Another thing that came up was people feeling awkward while writing in a journal, and I wasn't too sure what they meant by that, because, I mean, I don't think there should be anything awkward about it. I think it should be totally private, which we'll talk about more in a second. But this should be just between you and you know, your hypothetical journal bestie. And there's no need to feel awkward. It's like, do you feel awkward with yourself alone in the shower? Maybe the first time you ever showered. You know, it might just be that you're not used to journaling yet. But I really think you can get past that, because it's just you and you alone. And yeah, there's no reason to be awkward or embarrassed by anything about that. So don't worry about that. Another question is, do I ever have days that I don't feel like it? And I can genuinely say no, I do not. And that ties back into that routine. Like I said, I've made it such a cozy routine. I've tied my coffee into it, which I always want coffee, and the candles, and just like setting a whole mood to start the day. I would never not want that. There have been times like in the depths of really hard emotional stuff where you almost don't want to like face those emotions on the page. And for one thing, you don't always have to write about your heaviest emotions. You can kind of, like, while my mom was in the hospital, I rarely wrote about that. I don't know why. It was just some days I couldn't bring myself into that depth of emotion. So I would talk about other things. But it was still a cathartic process to journal and to know that I had that space to come to when I did really need to cry it out and grieve it out. My journal was there for me, and I had set up that relationship with it. So I think it's worth it to try to push yourself even on the days that you don't feel like it. I think there won't be a lot of days that you don't feel like it if you follow all these tips. And the other thing I would say about consistency is also, if you want to start this habit, just commit. Like every single day while I drink my coffee, I'm going to write in my journal and make that decision in advance. Because I think it's like when we aren't committed to something, then we're like, should I do it today? Should I not? There's always like 100 reasons not to. So if this is something you're curious about that you've been wanting to do, just commit. just try. And then after a couple weeks, if it's really not adding anything to your life, you can stop. But until you really start and give it a shot, you won't know. Okay, another topic that came up a lot, and you guys are after my own heart because it was perfectionism. Everybody was struggling with perfectionism, worrying that their handwriting wasn't nice enough, worrying about writing in a beautiful journal and quote unquote ruining it. And I hear you guys, like, this is a girl that used to rewrite her homework in like elementary school to have better handwriting. Like, I am right there with you. But I really want to encourage you to know that journaling is not a space for perfectionism. Like, let it go. It's going to serve you so much to just let it go. Just know this is an imperfect practice. That is the magic of it. It's meant to be imperfect, and that's okay. So I don't worry about my handwriting at all. I scrawl in like messy half cursive usually. Just the fastest way that I can write and get my thoughts out. Like I said, I'm not really trying to reread it. In my journals that I do reread, like this 5-year one, I do try to have nicer handwriting. But that's just a couple lines a day. That's not like gonna make or break me. And there are some messy days in here, and that's fine. Yeah, really try to purposely let go of your perfectionism. And I have to tell you, you're not ruining a journal by writing in it. You're fulfilling its life purpose. These things are here to be used. So let's use them. I used to struggle with that too. And then since I've embraced writing in all of my notebooks, I feel so much happier. I'm not like hoarding tons and tons of empty notebooks. No need to be perfectionistic. And when I do have a journal that just really is truly way too beautiful, I would never recycle it or get rid of it. Like this gorgeous Cinderella one, I absolutely love it. I will just use a notebook like this for gratitude. I mean, this can last forever as a gratitude journal because there's so many pages in here. And then that's something that you always want to reread. You wouldn't be embarrassed for anybody else to reread it. So I can literally put it on my shelf as a display item because it is still a beautiful display item. So that's what I would recommend for like the truly, truly special, gorgeous notebooks. But like I said, other than that, pick a 50-cent journal from the thrift store and just tear it up. Okay, more questions. A lot of people, or at least a few people, were worried about just writing in a diary like a kid, like Dear Diary, and sharing, I guess, thoughts that felt more juvenile to them. And so my first question to that is like, what's so bad about that? What would be so wrong with keeping a diary that reminds you of childhood? I don't know. Personally, I think that'd be kind of great. I think there's a lot of things from childhood that we could keep alive as adults that would bring us more joy. I personally don't see that as a problem. I think the more we can keep our inner child alive and healthy and happy, the better. So if keeping a diary in a childlike way comes naturally to you, there's nothing wrong with that. The only way I could think that that might be bothering somebody is, I guess maybe that kind of like petty stuff would remind you of like middle school. I don't know. But if it's just a matter of kind of triggering childlike feelings, I would just try to lean into it. I know a lot of people must have really had it drilled into them, like you must grow up and you must be so adult. But there's nothing wrong with keeping a journal. It doesn't have to be a childlike thing at all. And if it is, I can think of a lot worse things than having a little bit of childlike wonder as you write in a journal every morning. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to start each entry with the words Dear Diary, like if that triggers you for some reason. I usually do say like, good morning, hi, how are you? Even though obviously it's just a paper journal, you know, polite manners matter. It's nice to just start out with a greeting. And I do usually end it like I showed you guys with a little bit of a sign off just because that's what feels natural to me. But in no way am I like a third grader, like Dear Diary, and then like gossiping about other people or I don't know, whatever feels juvenile to you. You can steer away from that. But there's a way to journal that does not have to be like that. Another question, why do it at all? Why journal? In case I haven't answered this yet at this point in the video. For me, I think the process is the reward, just getting my thoughts down on paper. It makes me feel good, it elevates my mood, it helps me see what I'm thinking, helps me see patterns that I might be repeating, and it just positions me to be in a better place in my life. I like to journal in a way that does kind of level up my life. It helps me realize what would serve me better in my life. It helps me motivate myself to follow through on things in the day that will make me feel better, stuff like that. So I think this is a good place to mention that I do not dwell in negativity in my journal. This is not a place to beat yourself up. There were a couple years that when I would look back at the journals from those years, I was so hard on myself, and I would really use it as a space to just beat myself up. And I think there's kind of like a rhetoric in our culture that that's how you motivate someone, you know, like just do it type of mentality, like go harder, hustle culture, all of that stuff. So I would be really hard on myself in those old journals, and that didn't feel good. Didn't feel good while I did it. Didn't feel good afterward. For me personally, that doesn't motivate any type of change. So once I realized I was kind of in a pattern of being a little bit hard on myself, I completely cut that shit out. Like I decided this is a positive space. This is like, everybody needs to rant once in a while, of course. But overall, I keep it a positive space. I look for the positive. I purposefully write about the positive things. I purposefully write about the gratitude. And I keep it a happy place because it just wasn't serving me at all to make it negative. And then you're not going to want to do it if you're just showing up in your journal to beat yourself up every day. Another thing that came up a lot in the questions I was getting were privacy concerns. And to that, I'd like to say, I think privacy is a basic adult human right. So if you are in a living situation where you don't have privacy, this might be your cue to look into that a little bit, set some boundaries. And yeah, I think everybody should have the right to just voice some thoughts on paper and know that it's totally private. I had actually never really had a conversation with my husband. He's the only other human that I live with. I just always assumed he would never read my journal, and he has a journal too. He keeps it, he writes in it like once a year, but it's so cute. But I would never ever open that up and read that. Like to me, that's a huge boundary. So I asked him about it when all these privacy concerns were coming in, and he was like, yeah, absolutely. Like we just give each other that space. So I think it would be good to kind of clear the air with anybody you live with. Like, hey, here's a boundary that, you know, you have privacy with your journal. Obviously you can put it away somewhere that it's not like in somebody's face tempting them to read it all day. And I will say the only scenario I could picture somebody wanting to read a diary is if they like sense that you're holding back from them, maybe like there's problems in your relationship and you're not communicating. They might be so desperate for insight as to what's going on that they might read your diary. Or also if I was like dead and gone, I could see my husband picking up my diary, which would be embarrassing, but I couldn't blame him at all because, you know, if you miss somebody, of course that could happen too. So that's another reason that I do like to recycle the old ones, because I don't need anybody ever picking those up. But yeah, I think this could be your cue to establish some privacy boundaries in your own life, because you deserve that. It's truly a basic right. But also in thinking about these privacy questions that came in, it did kind of make me realize that I think I had an unspoken policy with myself that I don't really journal anything I wouldn't say to someone's face. Like I said, I think it should be a positive space, your journal, and it's one thing to vent, but I would never just come to my journal and like day after day be bashing my husband or complaining about him or something like that. If I did ever like vent about anything to do with my husband, I would probably talk to him about it afterward. Like I would use my journal as a way to work out like how I wanted to talk to him about it. Or I would decide, you know, that's not a big deal, and I would let it go. So that kind of takes away the fear of somebody reading your diary too, because if Nate picked up any of these diaries, like if there was anything negative about him, which would be extremely rare, it would be something I talked to him about. Or it would be something that I'd be like, yeah, I decided, who cares if you leave the toilet seat up? Which he doesn't. He's great that way. But yeah, same thing with friends. I think if I needed to vent about a friend, it wouldn't be anything I want to say to their face, because I just wouldn't want to kind of be gossipy, I guess. Like that is a very negative behavior trait that makes you feel bad. And the whole point of journaling is to feel good and to lift yourself up. So not a place for bashing anybody, not a place for negativity. If you need to work through something so that you can then communicate it with them, that's helpful. Another thing that came up are some people feel like they just repeat the same things over and over in their journal. So that is tapping into something right there. If you are rereading your past couple weeks or something and noticing like, wow, I constantly complain about this one thing in my life, that's your cue to listen up, like do something about that. I think in real life, you could vent to your friend about the same 5 things and she might be too nice to ever point out like, hey, you've been complaining about wanting to work out more for a decade and you never do it, you know? But if you reread your journal and you're constantly like, oh, I should work out more. Oh, why don't I work out more? This is it. You got to do something about it. My kind of personal policy is like, either I'm gonna do something to change the situation or I have to stop complaining about it. Because I'm not changing any situation in my life by complaining about it. And I either need to accept it, like, you know what, maybe working out is just not a priority. I need to just let it go. Or, yes, exercise is a huge priority. No more excuses, I'm just gonna start doing it. Obviously, sometimes there's situations that are outside of our control, but even in those settings, I think it's helpful to just find some way to accept it because it is reality, and not just keep coming to my journal every single day complaining about reality. You know, like, I'm here to make my life better, to make myself feel good, fire myself up for the day ahead, and I'm gonna do that through positivity. Okay, last couple questions from this little Q&A, and then I will show you my most prized possessions of life, and we'll wrap it up. Other people asked, what do I do when I'm traveling? Do I keep up my journaling habit? And I absolutely do. Journaling on vacation is some of the best journaling of life. Just like so delicious, so good. So I always bring at least my spiral brain dump journal with me, and then I will usually make some little notes in here so that when I get back from the trip, I can fill in my 5-year journal, what happened each day, or I can add some things to my gratitude journal, some big notes of gratitude from that trip. But just for the sake of traveling light, I will just bring this. Or if I'm traveling really light, I will just bring some loose leaf paper and like staple it in there later. But journaling when you're traveling is so cathartic, because a lot of times when we like step away from our life on a trip, we get that kind of bird's eye view of our life from the outside almost, and I have the best insight. So yes, when I travel, I always pack this. I pack a little tiny candle and try to create my little morning routine on the go. I will do it in a hotel, I will do it in an airport, I will do it on a train. Like, I won't light a candle anywhere it's not safe to, but you know what I mean. Like, I have my journal with me anytime I'm traveling. Last question, what kind of pens do I like? I think you all know I am a felt tip kind of gal. I love any pen with a felt tip. I think this ink lasts really well through the years, so if you are keeping a journal for posterity, for future people to read, that's really helpful. And if you are keeping a journal for future people to read, make sure you put your full name in it, first name and last name. Make sure you put the full date in it, including the year. Try to explain anything relevant, like don't just mention someone's name. Say like, my friend Bob came over. Don't just say Bob came over, you know, stuff like that. There's a really interesting TikTok where they have journals from 1930s and 1950s that a lady kept. And she didn't put much information in there. So the guy who found the journals had to do a lot of like sleuth work to figure out who she was. Turned out she had a really interesting life. She was like a bootlegger. It was just so interesting. So if you are writing a journal for future TikTokers to read to an audience of who knows how many people, put information in there for them. It'll help them out. All right, and now as promised, I want to show you, I get like chills and goosebumps just looking at this. This is my most prized possession that I would run into a burning building for. In fact, one of the earliest gifts that Nate got me was a fireproof safe to keep this in. And this is a diary that my mom kept when I was a baby. So these are all her entries in her handwriting about what life was like with me in my first couple years. The first entry is like a couple months after I was born, and then it goes until I was about 2 years old, 3 years old, 5 years old. The entries are very sporadic, and I never knew she kept this journal while she was alive. Thank goodness my dad found it amongst her things, and he gave it to me. And this is all she filled out, just this first part. But I mean, I think you guys can imagine how overwhelmingly powerful this was to get as an adult, to know that your mom kept a journal when you were a baby, and just like her thoughts about holding me, and like just little things like my sleep patterns and what I like to wear, and her thoughts about being a mom, and just so special. So I have goosebumps just talking about it. I'm gonna try not to get too emotional, but I'll read you a little passage. She said, of course you won't remember this, but you were here for Haley's comment, and I want you to know that when you're 75 years old and get to see it again, I want you to feel real good, knowing how much your mother loves you. I hope I'll be with you a long time, but when I do go, I don't want you to ever doubt how much I love you. So as you can see, I cannot reread this without getting emotional. It means the world to me. It's like something out of a movie that it's almost too good to be true, that I got to have some words from my mom after she was gone. So I just wanted to mention that if you have kids, it could be such an incredible gift to leave to them, even if they're not babies anymore, like I was when she kept this. Anytime you want to write letters of love, I think you absolutely should. Like, I live by the philosophy of always tell people you love them, and if you're thinking something positive about somebody, tell it to them. So anyway, that can be an absolutely amazing gift for a kid or a loved one or anybody else. I can't tell you how much I treasure this. And while we're on this sort of emotional topic, I'll share 2 final journaling things with you guys. These are journals I have for both of my parents. I had a therapist about, she's more than 10 years after my parents had died. And she encouraged me to get a journal to write to my dad and to get a journal to write to my mom. And I think you hear so much about with grief how we shouldn't be in denial. We should be like completely in acceptance of the grief, and that's really key to moving on. So I would have thought somebody was crazy if they told me to do that in that like whole first decade of healing. But once I had a therapist suggest that to me, and almost like once I had permission from a mental health professional that this wouldn't be an act of denial, but that it could be an act of healing, I loved this concept. So she said, right after this session, go to Barnes & Noble and pick out journals that remind you of your parents. So I picked this one with butterflies for my mom. She loved butterflies. And this like kind of sciencey looking one for my dad. And I put a picture of them inside, and I just write letters to them in these journals. And at first I had a lot that I wanted to say, a lot to catch them up on. And it was really cathartic for me. Like, just, it always bothered me, like, that my parents didn't know I lived in California. You know, like, you kind of have that, like, sense left over from childhood that it just feels sort of weird that your parents don't know where you are, or, like, my mom never got to meet the man that I married, stuff like that. So I had a lot to catch up on at first. And I would write a lot of entries just telling them how my life had changed since they died. And then over the years, it would be like, you know, on their birthday, on their death day, anniversaries and holidays, I would come just to have a place to like check in. So that's something I think everybody, it's a very personal issue whether you're comfortable with something like that or not. But I will say, as somebody who has gone through a lot of grief, this has been a really healing practice for me. And you know, you can do this in any journal too, just to use it as a space to write letters that you might never send, or that you can't talk to those people anymore, whatever it might be. So, okay, I know we got really emotional there at the end, but journaling is a very raw, intense topic, and that's why it's so powerful in our lives, if you're willing to go there. So, I hope I answered some very significant questions today. I also have a printable for you if you'd like me to hold your hand. I would be honored to hold your hand through your journaling journey. I have a printable that has notes on everything we talked about in this video, because I know it's kind of a lot to remember. And I also have over 25 journaling prompts for you. These are not like your typical, like, what are 5 items you'd like to have on a deserted island? Or what are your top 10 favorite books? Like, I think those things are great. I like those as conversation starters with other people that I can learn about them. But at least for me in my life, maybe it's because I'm in my 30s, but I feel like I know myself pretty well. So I don't need journaling to like get to know myself. I need journaling to help me unlock like the next level, the next layer of growth in my life, or just improving my day, achieving goals, all that good stuff. So these journal prompts are more towards that. Like, how do you want to feel today? How can you show up that way today? One that I had a really like amazing like 10-page journal session recently was, if your body could talk, what would she have to say to you, and what would she ask of you? So many powerful things here. So I tried to collect all of the topics that have helped me personally fill all these pages that I showed you, and just have the most growth. So you can use this printable however you want. I'm going to laminate mine and then just tuck it into my quiet time basket. So if I ever do have one of the rare mornings when I don't know what to say, I have all the prompts here to just trigger and inspire things that will tap into a more fulfilling journal session. And then, like I said, if you need reminders on anything we talked about, I got you. Have that printable for you. I actually have a whole new online shop, so you guys can check that out if you'd like. Okay, I think that's everything. I just really wanted to share this with you because I have such a passion for journaling, And even if this doesn't wind up being a passion for you, I hope you can find whatever makes you excited to get out of bed in the morning. I remember talking to my brother a long time ago about, like, how come when you see those like 100-year-old ladies, they sometimes still smoke cigarettes and have all these unhealthy habits and things. And he said, I think it's because they had a reason to get out of bed every day. So even if that reason is something unhealthy like a cigarette, it did give them something to get up for and to feel excited about waking up. And journaling is such a much healthier habit, obviously, that it can be that tool in your life. So whatever it might be, I hope you have some reason that you're excited to get up in the morning that brings you joy, because that's so, so important, and you just really deserve that moment of self-care for yourself if you can carve out that space in your day. I know it's really hard in some seasons of life. I'm sure if you're a mom, if you have young kids, this might sound impossible and you might have to get kind of creative on how you have time for this. I remember I used to work at Starbucks and my shift would start at 4 a.m. and I would get up at 3 so that I could journal before I went in. So sometimes it's a lot harder than others. And you have my sympathy if you're in a season of life where it's really hard to carve out the time for this. But I just want to encourage you that it can be so rewarding and so worth it. So I hope I helped, and I can't wait to hear about all of your journaling adventures, and I hope I get to come along with you on those journeys too. And thank you so much for being here. Hit subscribe if you want to join for more deep dives in the future, get more inspiration for leveling up your life, having more self-care in your life. It's all so important, and you deserve it. And I love you guys, so I'll see you in the next video. Bye.